Any questions? Councillor Bradford?
Through the chair, thanks very much for that barn burner, Adam. Obviously, a lot of passion around this topic, and certainly appreciate that. What was the biggest challenge for you, aside from sort of, the cutting of the ward boundaries and the chaos that took place there? But aside from that, what was the biggest challenge in the municipal election for you as a candidate?
I guess I would say is the unfamiliar territory I was then forced to go into. It was the fact that I knew my home ward very well, and I was a stranger to the other half. And after nearly a decade of learning one thing, I was kind of forced to jump on the other. And simply put, it's one thing if that was done prior to the election. It's a completely different story to do it in the middle of the election. It just totally throws everyone off balance, and that was the biggest challenge for me, was simply having to get familiar, within a few months mid-election with a territory that I just wasn't my home.
I think that was everybody.
Yeah.
And there was 241 candidates, I think, that ran for council in the election, and that was kind of everyone's experience. Aside from it became 25 wards, what other sort of challenges did you experience?
Oh, I mean, I suppose at that point, I don't know, are we really just talking about the usual challenges of any candidate, Again, if you throw aside the uncertainty and the chopping of the wards, I guess it was just, the typical getting out there. How do you hit enough houses? I mean, you were a shining example of how you really, hit the ground and nail tens of thousands of homes. But, the biggest challenge, I think, I guess that's it too, is that it's hard enough to get around to, 60,000 residents. It's even hard to get around to 110. There's only so many hours in the day and so many volunteers you can get behind you.
So based on your experience, it sounds like you would maybe suggest that cutting council or having 25 wards will make it inherently more difficult for new candidates.
Yes.
Having to go to 110,000 residents,
Yes.
having to fundraise.
It'll be much harder for a truly grassroots candidate to ever get a foothold. Again, deep pockets. It takes money to run a campaign, especially with a large, again, a campaign essentially on the same size as an MP or an MPP now, because we've got the same size ridings. And without party connections or deep pockets, it becomes very difficult to get entry into that arena.
Thank you. Last question. What sort of work would you suggest for specific things? Are there any specific things you would suggest direct this committee to look at over the term here?
Well, as I said, I think referendums are important. I think, we need to find ways, citizen assembly is one thing, but I really think it needs to go to, decisions like this. Any governance decision, I think, should go to the wider public, straight up, hands down. Again, I don't know what the cost of that is. I can tell you there are places in Ontario already doing online voting for municipal elections. I only know of Smiths Falls, of all the random places I can mention, but, even the federal government, through its e-petitions, has found a stable and secure way to gather public input. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be a costly exercise, referendums, and it could be something that can be done from people's homes if, the city would manage to figure out a way to do that online.
Thanks very much. Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
I'm just wondering, you're a fan of referenda, we get that. But I'm wondering if you want to speak to how we get around, if we broaden it out. And I'm a fan of participatory decision making, obviously, but a full-on referenda type of structure leaves you vulnerable to, David Frum did a great speech on this on CNN, that in the era of social media, it becomes very problematic because of the way social media can so easily manipulate and create an angry mob, one way or the other. And since a referenda agenda for a government leads to more and more decisions being taken that way, are we leaving ourselves more and more open to I hate to use the term fake news or anything else that might manipulate the outcome of each individual referendum?
Well, what I would ask you is, how is that any different from any of our elections right now? What you just said is applicable to any of our elections, any of our, like, you know, our wider elections, whether it be the city, the province, or the Fed. So to me, that's a problem with any time you're going to a vote with the people. They're going to be subject and exposed to fake news. They're going to be subject and exposed to ideologues and demagogues wanting to drive them in, you know, some illogical direction that suits their purposes. So, you know, it really, though, in the end, and this is how I felt, you know, about when Ontario put MMP on the ballot as well. It is incumbent on the government to educate its people and to dispel the fake news and to ensure that the information is getting out there in a timely fashion and in a way that is accessible to residents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? None. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.